Your self-identity is one of the things that draws a line around your comfort zone. Your self-identity is one signal to you that you are either inside or outside of your comfort zone, because people like me do certain things and people like me do not do other things. And so not only does that self-identity keep you in your comfort zone, but it keeps you from reaching your true potential if that potential lies outside of what is comfortable today. Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, where together we explore ways to live our most joyful, aligned, vibrant lives. On this podcast, we draw inspiration from the lessons embedded in other women's stories, and we use them to catalyze our own growth and success. And we explore concepts and techniques from the fields of psychology and design thinking that can help us thrive and make the most of the one and only life we're ever going to have. My name is April Seifert. I'm a psychologist, an entrepreneur, and a self-proclaimed life experience junkie, and I'm your host and friend along this journey. This podcast is supported by Modern Well, a woman-centered co-opportunity workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Friend, it is time to start living vibrantly, by design and with intention. Here we go. Hey friends, happy Monday. Monday! I'm coming to you with an episode of the podcast on a Monday, which is totally different than what I normally do. So let me explain just a little bit. The purpose of this podcast is to bring you the content and inspiration and information that you need to live your biggest, boldest, most aligned life. Now, as the podcast has been growing, I've been getting more questions from people who have been listening to these episodes, listening to these incredible stories of these amazing women. I've been getting more outreach questions. And the thing is, I've been answering them. I've been, messaging people back and emailing them back, however it is that they reach out to me. But what occurred to me is that by answering these questions via email and via DM on social media, I'm not actually benefiting my broader audience as a whole. I'm benefiting that person, and that's great. That's amazing. But I'm not benefiting the broader audience of you who might have the same question. It's just you didn't reach out to me to ask it. So what I want to do going forward is release episodes occasionally on Mondays where I'm going to dive into a particular topic from the field of psychology or from design thinking or life design to help shed a bit of light on a given topic that impacts you in some meaningful way. So today's topic fits that bill completely. And before we jump into it, I want you to answer the following questions. It's actually a fill in the blank. It's a little bit like Mad Libs is how we're going to start this episode. So fill in the blank here. I'm the type of person who what? Or people like me do or don't what? So think about this in terms of taking risks. People like me do or don't take risks. What's the right answer for you? How about money? How about making money? Lots of money. People like me do or don't easily make lots of money. How would you answer that question brutally honestly? What's true for you? How about your career? What type of career, what type of job do people like you have? And how about your relationships with other people? Your relationships with maybe a significant other or close friends? Do people like you need other people, need their support? Yes or no? Now, as you think through these questions, you probably have a sense for how to answer them, right? There's probably a knee-jerk, quick response that you can give to each question. Because For most of us, one of those answers tends to feel more authentic than the other one. So if you are not a risk taker, when I say people like me do or don't take risks, you probably had that knee-jerk reaction toward the, no, we don't do that. Like people like me don't do that. So one tends to feel more authentic than the other. And this is the topic of today's episode, this is your self-identity kicking in. This is your self-identity telling you what the right answer is to each question. And this concept of self-identity and the belief system that is created around each of our own unique self-identities is so incredibly powerful. And that's why I want to dig into it in this episode. And here's the thing. Most people, they don't intentionally even think through their own identity. They don't spend the time to think about this set of questions. People like me, what? Or I'm the type of person who, what? They don't take that time to intentionally think through something that is so core to them as their own self-identity. I'm like banging on my chest as I'm saying this. Can you hear that? I'm like hitting my chest as I'm saying this because it's so important. And even fewer people, and this is the killer of all this, even fewer people take the time to consider what that self-identity means, meaning what impact it's going to have on their lives, on their success, on what they will or won't even try to do. I encourage you, go back to the list that I asked you before. Which one of those was a don't? Do you not take risks? Do people like you not easily make large sums of money? Do people like you not need other people? Consider this. If that quote unquote don't, if it's true, what does that mean for you? What does that mean you will or won't do? So think about risk taking. If people like you don't take risks, think about how much it can constrain what you're even willing to try. Or think about this concept of money, right? People like me make good money. We easily make good money, right? Is that true or not true for you? If you're not the type of person who easily makes money, do you think you are likely to ask for a raise and the size of a raise that you deserve when it's time for you to do that? How likely do you think it is that you'll even think about the idea that it's time for you to ask for a raise and then be able to ask for the size of one that you deserve? Now, with that, we got kind of in the weeds really quickly there, but zoom out from that. Zoom out and think about your identity as a whole. Every single one of those do's and don'ts, every one of those I'm the type of person who and I'm not the type of person who, every single one of those is just a belief. It's a belief that you have about yourself. And when you zoom out and you take them all together, I want you to imagine how much of your behavior is dictated by your identity. Think about that. How much of your behavior is dictated by the simple answers to the questions, people like me, what? And, sometimes this can be a good thing, right? People like me don't steal. People like me don't cheat. So great. My self-identity keeps me from stealing and cheating. Great. That's wonderful. Congratulations, society. I'm not going to go steal a bunch of stuff. But those beliefs that we have about ourselves, they can also be bad in the sense that you've probably heard this in, just media and out in popular culture. They can be self-limiting. Those beliefs about ourselves can put a ceiling on our potential that is not true. It's not actually what our true potential is. Our true potential is so much beyond that, but we can't see it and we're not willing to shoot for it because we have a belief in our identity of who we are, and that's keeping us from even seeing that that is a direction or a path we could go down. All right, so today I want to talk a little bit more about this concept of self-identity. I want to talk about how it's formed. So this is cognitively how it's formed. I want to talk about how it shapes and why it shapes our behavior. There's actually an adaptive reason for it, even though it can be a total bummer sometimes because it keeps us from doing things we want to do. So I want to talk about how it can shape our behavior. And then I want to talk about what you can do about it. And with that, I want to make sure that you know there is an absolutely free workbook. This is a hands-on, free, downloadable PDF workbook that goes with this week's podcast session. You don't need it while you're listening to this podcast episode, but what I would encourage you to do is head over to the show notes page, click the link in this episode description to head over to the show notes page for this episode and download that workbook, because that workbook is going to guide you through think about it as like a self-identity diagnostic. It's going to go through a number of different facets of your self-identity and help you intentionally think through, are you the type of person who does or does not do this thing in a bunch of different domains? And then it leads you through a hands-on exercise about what to do from there and where to go. So get that download. It's super valuable. I was so excited to put it out there because this concept of self-identity, which we'll dive into more in just a moment, it is so incredibly powerful in terms of how it shapes our behavior. So get that download, make sure you go through it, and if you experience any kind of shift as a result of it, I want to hear from you. I'm pounding on my chest again. Man, I'm going to be like sore by the end of this episode. I'm so fired up about this topic. I can't even handle it. So go get that download, and I want to hear from you. How did it go? What did you find out? All right, let's start with how our self-identity is formed. And here I'm going to go straight cognitive psychology on you. So something that you need to know about our minds is that they are powerful. They are not that sophisticated. So here I'm talking about the concept of our mind where our thoughts occur. I'm not talking about how our neurons fire and keep our heart beating. That seems really complicated and super sophisticated to me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our minds and the habits that our thoughts happen to develop. That's the area that I'm talking about today. And that is the area that I'm talking about when I say it is powerful, but not that sophisticated. And here's why. It's not that sophisticated because our mind runs on associations. We learn from tiny, tiny baby, think days old. We learn throughout our lives through the pairing of one concept with another concept. The more concepts and the more certain information is paired together, meaning it tends to co-occur in our lives, the more those pairings occur, the deeper those cognitive habits happen, and the more we develop an association, or think of it as like a cognitive structure or spider web around a particular idea. So let me give you an example that's outside of the realm of what we're talking about, because sometimes that makes it easier. Think about a little kid, and they're learning, everything about everything in the world. But let's think about little kids and dogs. Think about little kid A. Little kid A has a number of incredible experiences with dogs. They're adorable, they're very well behaved, they're cute, they want belly rubs, they give you mooches. That's what we call them in my house. We don't call them kisses or smooches, we call them mooches. They give you mooches, they're just the best. And repeatedly, that kid is exposed to dogs over and over and over in this situation where dogs are wonderful. That kid's mind is literally mapping the idea of a dog to this notion of happy and tails wagging and comfortable and loving and fun and joyful and all of those positive things. So when that kid sees a dog, the concept of dog fires, that was me snapping my fingers, fires in his mind, as does all of the other information that has been webbed or associated with the idea of dogs. So that kid, when that kid sees a dog, he's immediately going to feel snuggly and joyful and wonderful. Now imagine another kid, same kid or same age of kid, similar kid, but has a number of really negative experiences with dogs. Maybe this kid's been bit by a dog. Maybe this kid's been chased by a dog, maybe growled at by a dog or lunged at by a dog. And this has happened a couple of times. And the crazy thing is, on the negative side of the coin, it doesn't take that many trials. I'll tell you why in a second. But these associations have happened that has led this second child to form an very different association about the concept of dog. So when that kid who has been lunged at and chased and bit by dogs in the past, when that kid encounters a new dog that he's never met before, the concept of dog will fire in his mind just like the first kid, but the information that has been associated with or paired with or webbed to this concept of dog with this kid, it's going to fire things like fear and uncertainty, and this kid's going to start having a cortisol response, essentially, to the fact that this dog is there. Two kids, same concept, different associations because they've had different life experiences. So, bottom line, your mind it's powerful, but it's not sophisticated. It's not sophisticated because all we do is we pair information over and over and over, and our brain says, those two things happen together. I probably should store them close to one another. That's not that sophisticated, right? But it's powerful because our behavior and our physiological responses to certain stimuli, dogs in this case, is impacted by how that information is stored. Holy cow, huh? And I mentioned something before about negativity. Our mind, one of its biggest goals is to keep us alive, keep the species going, keep us alive, right? Finding fluffy, happy things, that's not really core to keeping us alive, but avoiding really scary, negative things that could hurt you or kill you, that is core to keeping us alive. So those associations around negative things, they don't take a lot of trials. They happen relatively quickly and easily because our mind is trying to keep us away from danger and keep us alive. Good? Dogs? We good? Great. What does all that have to do about your self-identity? I swear it's relevant. Your self-identity forms in a very similar way. You have this notion of you. You, in this case, are the stimulus material, just like dogs were to the kids that I gave, or the example of the kids that I just gave. You, through repeated exposure throughout your life, to your family, to friends, to people who live in your hometown, to your, social circle around you, to TV showing people who look like you. I'm going to leave that super open and let you interpret it because it means something different to everyone. People who look like you or seem like you. Your mind, from baby on, is learning people like me what? People who look like me or people who grew up like me or people who are like me in some way, we do what? And we don't do what? So in the same way that one kid could have that stimulus of a dog and have it trigger warm, fuzzy feelings, another kid has the stimulus of the dog and it triggers a fear and cortisol response. Same situation for people and, for example, risk-taking. A person who has learned over time through repeated association, who has learned people like me don't take risks, they're going to have that fear response to the notion of taking a risk, even if it's a physically safe risk. Versus someone who has learned risk-taking's okay, failure's okay, it's okay to make a mistake, it's no big deal. People like us get back up and we are fine with it. They're not going to have that same response to the idea of taking a risk. Now again, zoom back out to all of those questions that I asked. And I mentioned the download. There is a ton more domains to consider in that download. It's very, very robust. But think back to all of those areas that I talked about before. So risk taking, making money, the type of career you have, whether you need other people. Your self-identity, and let's shift into now, not just how it's formed, but how it shapes our behavior. Your self-identity is one of the things that draws a line around your comfort zone. Your self-identity is one signal to you that you are either inside or outside of your comfort zone, because people like me do certain things and people like me do not do other things. And so not only does that self-identity keep you in your comfort zone, but it keeps you from reaching your true potential if that potential lies outside of what is comfortable today. Think about that. Your self-identity can be self-limiting because it keeps you from doing things that aren't in alignment with what that identity is. And one of the processes that this operates through is something called cognitive dissonance, which you've probably heard of in Psych 101. If your behaviors and if the things that you say and the things that you do are not in line with a belief system that you have, and your identity is just a bunch of beliefs that have, that you've learned over time and associated with yourself, if you're acting or speaking out of alignment with a set of beliefs that you hold to be true, you experience this psychologically icky feeling of cognitive dissonance. It's not a comfortable state to be in. So think about that. Your identity forms through these associations, which, by the way, the fact that people form different associations means they're not true. Nuts, huh? People like me don't start companies? No, someone just like you has a different association about themselves, and that's why they're starting a company, right? Do you get this? Do you get why this is so important? I'm starting to bang on the desk again. It's so important because those beliefs that you have about yourself, they came from society around you and from the associations that your mind, as unsophisticated as it is, created. You could have just as easily gotten the opposite. Consider for one moment that the beliefs that you have about yourself are not true. What? Right? What if your true potential is so far out of that comfort zone that your self-identity has set for you? What if you don't ever reach it? And let's turn a corner now into what to do about it. The reason why I created the download for this episode is because I want you to go through an intentional exercise of thinking about what your self-identity is and what it means for the behaviors that you do, for goals you set, for how long you persist at those goals, what you do when you start to fail, and ultimately how successful you will be. Your self-identity can be incredibly protective, but it can also be incredibly constraining. So, I want you to consider for just a moment that the way that your self-identity formed, this isn't black and white truth. It's just a set of beliefs. And before I close out today, I want to plug one more time the free download for this week's episode, for this Monday episode. Go through it. Go through that intentional exercise of diagnosing your own self-identity and thinking about how that might be shaping your behavior, because you're going to start to see cracks in the facade. You're going to start to question, and this is what to do about it. You're going to start to question those beliefs. Are they actually true? Do I really know for certain that no one who's like me could ever start a company? I'm totally relying on my old set of beliefs about myself. Do I really know, and if you listen to my episode with Sylvie Kukassian, you heard me talk about this so much. Do I know that I don't need other people? I had insane, insecure attachment before I got married. And that belief about myself made my relationships extremely difficult. So these beliefs that we have, our own self-identity, it is extremely powerful and extremely impactful on the experience that we have day to day and what we're willing to go after in our own lives. So I encourage you, get intentional, diagnose your own, and figure out where your actual potential lies, even if it's outside of that comfort zone. Start nudging that comfort zone out so that it finally envelops that true potential. All right, you guys, I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. Wednesday, there is an incredible interview episode coming up. I hope you guys found this valuable. Please go grab that download and let me hear from you about what you're discovering about yourself. I'd love some feedback. All right, you guys, have a great rest of your week. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.